All right, so I want to do a quick and short introduction to Greek lyric poetry today. In particular, it is ancient Greek lyric poetry, and I'm using the Oxford World's Classics entitled Greek Lyric Poetry. It's a translation by M.L. West. I won't cover the whole introduction, but just the main points that give a general view. Alright, so it was mostly sung or recited, and the music that accompanied it was just there to support the vocal melody. It wasn't terribly complex. So although the name lyric might imply that it is set to a lyre, it is not necessarily the case. There is other options like the harp and I believe it's pronounced alloy. It's said to be a kind of oboe, but I'll try to find an image. I've seen some things that I believe are this instrument where it looks like somebody's playing two flutes at the same time. And there was a note that I recall in the introduction saying that whenever people have translated flute from ancient Greek to English, something as flute, like flute players, etc., they actually mean this instrument. And not particularly what we think of as a flute. So it's not an indication of a particular literary style or mood. For this, I would think of what we think of today as an elegy. It has a certain somber mood and theme, and Greek lyric poetry at this time this title doesn't indicate any of that. So it includes every kind of poetry, kind of just like a big basket, with the exceptions of epic, drama, didactic, philosophy, and other verses in hexameter. And for this, so epic would be Homer. For the didactic and philosophy, I would think that people at the time used verse to transmit information differently than we do now. And so I think it's excluded from this category because there are other intentions that are more important, right? So for epic and drama, they kind of deserve their own spaces. They are still part of our kind of artistic sphere, but the Greeks did, communicate information through verse, but we don't include that in calling it lyric, right? So it is intrinsically social poetry meant to be delivered orally, so either sung or recited to an audience. This is an aspect as well that we may or may not associate with poetry, depending on our own individual lives. I think for the most part, people encounter poetry in its written form when they're studying in school, but some people have still or do still engage with poetry as something that's performed. So it could be public or private settings, and it is essentially a means of communication to others. Now, West compares this to, I think, kind of the romantic sentiment where a poet is kind of revealing himself to himself, a kind of diary of his feelings, and it's not really meant the poetry kind of escapes their clutches into the public view. So this is completely not the case here. All the poetry is meant to be shared with others, and in that sense, something is always being communicated, right? It's a vehicle for these other messages. And so he does say that it is commonly subdivided into these three categories. I believe it's pronounced melic, elegy, and iambus. And he does say that it is a bit problematic, but we'll go through them anyway. Alright, so melic, meaning for song, is a bit problematic here, since most of elegy is also sung. So there isn't much of a differentiation in this alone. But this is a term ascribed to a wide range of poetry, from personal ditties to solemn choral cantatas. So again, it is not a classification that it's not very useful, as it blends with elegy, but it gives us no sense of what the content or the mood is going to be. Now, elegy here is not what we would normally think, which would imply a kind of somber mood and theme. Here it is an identification of what meter is being used. In particular, the elegiac couplet. So there's a bit of a description there about what it is. And finally, the iambus, which gave its name to the iamb. So if we think of the iambic pentameter, so it's not the other way around, even though that might be something that we think of looking back. It is because this particular foot was used commonly within iambus that the foot got its name iamb. And here we have monologues and songs that were typically ludicrous, bawdy, they are erotic, they're about, these narratives of either personal narratives or narratives of a particular person who has extravagant escapades. For now, this is kind of the somewhat useful, but as West says, it is problematic. That closes off our introduction of ancient Greek lyric poetry. And hopefully soon I will have a next video about Archilochus, and we'll go on from there. All right.